In a world that constantly demands noise, opinion, and reaction, silence has become a rare and radical virtue. We live in an age where everyone has something to say, but few have something worth hearing. Social platforms encourage us to broadcast every thought, every feeling, every argument, but in doing so, we often lose the deeper treasure of wisdom and discernment. To focus on yourself and stay silent is not about selfish withdrawal. It is about spiritual alignment, self-mastery, and the quiet strength that comes from restraint. When we turn our attention inward, examining our own hearts, motives, and walk with God, we discover that silence is not weakness, but power. The loudest voices are not always the wisest voices. The calmest spirits are not passive, but anchored. By choosing silence, we preserve our dignity, guard our peace, and position ourselves to hear what truly matters. The discipline of silence is the discipline of focus. It is the refusal to waste energy on fruitless arguments, the rejection of needless comparisons, and the embrace of personal growth. When you focus on yourself and remain silent, you allow your life, not your words, to testify of your strength, your faith, and your transformation. The power of silence is one of the most underrated strengths in life, and yet it holds the key to wisdom, peace, and spiritual growth. Silence is not merely the absence of words, it is the presence of restraint, discernment, and a deep sense of control over oneself. In moments when emotions run high, when provocation is strong, or when injustice appears loud, it is tempting to respond immediately with words, but often the wisest response is no response at all. Silence gives space for clarity to arise, for truth to emerge, and for God to speak into situations where human words would only cloud the matter further. Many of the great downfalls in relationships, careers, and reputations begin not with actions, but with words spoken in haste, unfiltered and unmeasured. Words have weight, and once released, they cannot be taken back. Silence, on the other hand, is never regretted. No one looks back and laments the times they kept quiet, but many carry scars from words they wish they had never spoken. Silence also acts as a shield. When one remains silent in the face of gossip, slander, or provocation, they disarm their adversaries. Arguments are like flames. They require fuel to burn. The moment you answer back, the fire is fed. The moment you hold your peace, the fire starves and eventually dies. Silence keeps you from becoming entangled in fruitless debates that waste energy and distract you from your greater calling. It takes strength to walk away, and even greater strength to stay quiet when your flesh demands retaliation. In silence, you are not surrendering. You are choosing a higher battlefield where only wisdom reigns. Furthermore, silence is the companion of observation. When you speak less, you hear more. When you refrain from filling every space with words, you begin to notice details others miss, the intentions behind actions, the subtleties in behavior, the hidden truths that slip past the noisy. Silence sharpens discernment. It positions you not as one who reacts, but as one who understands. And understanding is more powerful than reaction, for it equips you to act wisely when the time is right. Silence also nurtures the inner life. In stillness, your heart has the chance to align itself with God. The scriptures remind us that it is often in the quiet, in the whisper, that God speaks. We miss His voice when we are too busy proving our own. Silence makes room for prayer, reflection, and self-examination. It allows us to bring our emotions before God rather than unleashing them on others. The silent soul is the one that listens before it speaks, prays before it acts, and trusts before it argues. Ultimately, silence is not emptiness but fullness. It is a well of strength, a fortress against foolishness, and a seedbed for wisdom. It is not about weakness or passivity, but about discipline, self-control, and trust in God's timing. When you learn to embrace silence, you learn to walk in a power that few understand but many respect. Self-examination over judgment is one of the most transformative disciplines a person can cultivate. It is always easier to point fingers, to find flaws in others, to measure their shortcomings, and to assume the position of a critic. But the truth is, judgment of others is often a smokescreen for neglecting the more difficult task of examining oneself. To focus on the weaknesses of others requires little effort, but to look inward with honesty, humility, and courage requires strength. The greatest journey one can take is not outward into the lives of others, but inward, into the depths of one's own heart, motives, and character. When you choose self-examination over judgment, you move from being reactive to being responsible. Instead of asking, "What is wrong with them?" you begin to ask, "What is within me that needs refinement?" This shift changes everything. It removes bitterness and replaces it with humility. It silences gossip and replaces it with prayer. It eliminates pride and replaces it with growth. Judgment condemns others without making oneself any better, but self-examination confronts your own flaws and, through God's grace, makes you stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. There's also a spiritual danger in constantly judging others. It blinds you to your own need for transformation. When all of your energy is directed outward, you become oblivious to the inner areas that are decaying, the habits that are harming, and the attitudes that are poisoning your soul. The one who examines himself regularly does not have time to sit on the throne of criticism because he is too busy seeking personal alignment with God. The words of Christ remind us clearly, before you attempt to remove the speck from your brother's eye, first remove the plank from your own. Self-examination is not optional. It is the foundation of authentic spiritual growth. Practically speaking, self-examination develops maturity. Instead of being tossed about by the behaviors and choices of others, you anchor yourself in the responsibility of your own life. You become less concerned with whether someone else measures up and more focused on whether you are walking faithfully in the path set before you. This produces stability and credibility. People trust those who are more focused on improving themselves than tearing down others. Your influence grows not because you highlight the faults of others, but because your own character shines with integrity, humility, and consistency. Finally, self-examination brings peace. Judgment of others stirs conflict, fuels division, and breeds resentment. But when you examine yourself, you quiet the noise of competition and comparison. You recognize that your journey is unique, your struggles are personal, and your growth is between you and God. This understanding frees you from the exhausting weight of judgment and allows you to live in grace, both receiving it and extending it. In this way, self-examination is not only an act of humility, but also an act of liberation, for it releases you from the need to sit in judgment of others and centers your heart on the true work that matters, becoming the person God has called you to be. Strength in stillness is one of the greatest paradoxes of life, because the world often associates strength with activity, with loud declarations, and with visible demonstrations of power. Yet true strength often manifests in quietness, in composure, and in the ability to remain unshaken when everything around you demands a reaction. Stillness does not mean passivity, nor does it suggest weakness. It is the deliberate choice to anchor yourself in calmness rather than being swept away by the currents of chaos, fear, or anger. It is the recognition that frantic motion and noisy responses rarely lead to clarity, but that stillness allows you to see more clearly, hear more deeply, and respond more wisely. In times of uncertainty or conflict, the natural human instinct is to act quickly, to defend oneself, or to grasp for control. Yet history and scripture alike reveal that some of the most decisive victories are born out of stillness. It is in stillness that you regain control of your emotions before they control you. It is in stillness that you allow God's wisdom to filter into your situation instead of relying on your own impulses. Stillness is not inaction, it is preparation. It is the calm before deliberate and purposeful action. Stillness also guards your energy. Life is full of distractions, conflicts, and provocations designed to drain your focus. If you respond to everything, you will have little strength left for what truly matters. But when you practice stillness, you conserve your energy, refusing to waste it on petty quarrels or meaningless noise. This conservation of strength allows you to channel your efforts into purposeful pursuits, whether in your relationships, your calling, or your walk with God. Stillness keeps you from scattering your power and instead focuses it like a sharpened blade. Moreover, stillness cultivates resilience. When storms come, it is the tree with deep roots that remains unmoved. The stillness of the soul works the same way. It roots you so deeply in peace and trust that no matter how fierce the winds blow, you stand firm. This is why stillness is not about avoidance, but about preparation. It trains you to withstand pressure without breaking, to face adversity without collapsing, and to wait on God's timing without growing restless. The world may see quiet strength as weakness, but those who live it know it is the very foundation of endurance. Ultimately, strength in stillness is the ability to resist the tyranny of urgency. It is refusing to be rushed by fear, provoked by anger, or driven by pride. It is waiting, listening, and discerning before moving forward with intentional steps. Stillness allows you to walk in confidence, not because you are inactive, but because you are rooted, composed, and ready. It is in this stillness that you reflect the peace of God, and in that peace lies a strength that no noise, no chaos, and no enemy can overcome. Guarding energy and words is a discipline that separates the wise from the foolish. Words are powerful. They can heal or harm, build or destroy, open doors or close them forever. Energy, likewise, is finite, and how you choose to expend it determines the quality of your life. Too many people waste both words and energy on matters that do not advance their growth, their peace, or their purpose. They speak without restraint, argue without reason, and pour themselves out into conversations or conflicts that bear no fruit. The result is exhaustion, regret, and distraction from what truly matters. Guarding your words and energy means becoming intentional, choosing carefully where to invest your voice and strength. When you learn to control your words, you learn to control your life. A single sentence can unravel years of trust, while a word spoken with wisdom can mend a broken spirit. Unchecked speech is like opening the floodgates of a dam. It rushes out uncontrollably, causing damage that cannot be undone. Silence, by contrast, is a form of guarding. It keeps you from releasing words in anger or carelessness, words that may later haunt you. By guarding your tongue, you preserve dignity, build credibility, and prevent yourself from stepping into snares laid by others. Even Scripture declares that life and death are in the power of the tongue. To misuse it is to misuse one of the greatest tools given to us. Guarding your energy is equally vital. Life will always present endless demands, constant provocations, and countless distractions. If you do not choose where your energy goes, others will choose for you. People who thrive on conflict will drain you if you let them. Situations designed to provoke will consume you if you give them your attention. Guarding your energy means you refuse to fight every battle, you decline unnecessary arguments, and you prioritize what strengthens rather than what weakens you. This discipline ensures that your strength is preserved for meaningful endeavors, your growth, your relationships, your calling, and your faith. Guarding words and energy is also a way of honoring yourself and honoring God. When you waste words in gossip or reckless speech, you dishonor the image of God in yourself and in others. When you squander energy on fruitless pursuits, you neglect the purpose God has placed upon your life. But when you exercise restraint, you demonstrate maturity. You show that you understand the value of what you carry, and you refuse to let it be drained by what is trivial. Ultimately, guarding your words and energy is not about shutting yourself off from the world. It is about choosing to live with wisdom. It is about investing your strength and your voice where they will yield lasting impact. It is about recognizing that not every battle is worth fighting, not every opinion needs to be expressed, and not every demand deserves your attention. In learning this, you protect your peace, preserve your focus, and align your life with the path of purpose and discipline. Personal growth through discipline is the foundation upon which a meaningful and purposeful life is built. Growth does not happen by chance or by wishful thinking. It is the result of intentional choices, consistent habits, and a willingness to deny distractions in order to pursue what truly matters. Discipline is not a word many people enjoy because it requires effort, sacrifice, and commitment. Yet without it, progress remains out of reach. Discipline is the bridge between where you are and where you desire to be, and without crossing that bridge, personal growth is impossible. When you focus on yourself with discipline, you begin to recognize that every action has consequences, and every decision shapes your future. Growth is not found in occasional bursts of inspiration, but in steady, daily practice. Just as muscles only develop when trained regularly, character and wisdom only develop when exercised through consistent discipline. This means committing to prayer, study, reflection, healthy habits, and the intentional avoidance of distractions that pull you away from your higher calling. Discipline requires saying no to impulses that satisfy for the moment but rob you in the long run. It means sacrificing comfort today for strength tomorrow. Discipline also sharpens your focus. The world offers endless diversions, entertainment, arguments, gossip, and countless time-wasting pursuits. Without discipline, it is easy to fall into patterns of reacting to everything around you, leaving no room for inward development. But when you embrace discipline, you train yourself to direct your energy toward what enriches your mind, spirit, and body. You begin to measure your choices not by how easy they are, but by how much they contribute to the person you are becoming. This intentional living brings about maturity, resilience, and peace. Furthermore, discipline equips you to overcome weaknesses. Everyone has areas of struggle, whether in habits, emotions, or attitudes. Left unchecked, these weaknesses can dominate your life. But with discipline, you gradually confront them, one step at a time. You replace harmful patterns with healthy ones, shallow thinking with depth, and impulsive reactions with thoughtful responses. This process is not immediate, but every small act of discipline compounds over time, building strength where there was once weakness. In this way, discipline becomes a tool of transformation. Personal growth through discipline also impacts those around you. A disciplined life inspires others, not through loud declarations, but through quiet consistency. People respect those who live with self-control and focus because discipline produces reliability and credibility. It communicates that you are serious about your purpose and intentional about your journey. Without ever boasting, your disciplined life becomes a testimony of strength and commitment. Ultimately, personal growth through discipline is about stewardship. You are entrusted with time, talents, and opportunities, and discipline ensures you do not squander them. It reminds you that growth is not a matter of chance, but of choice, not of dreams, but of diligence. When you focus on yourself with discipline, you build a life of stability, strength, and wisdom, becoming the person God intended you to be. God's guidance and quietness is one of the most profound, yet often overlooked realities of spiritual life. In the noise of daily living, where countless voices compete for our attention, the subtle, steady voice of God is easily drowned out. We live in a culture that glorifies speed, noise, and constant stimulation, but God often speaks in ways that require stillness to perceive. His direction does not always come in dramatic signs or thunderous declarations. More often, it is revealed in whispers, impressions, and gentle nudges that can only be discerned by a quiet heart. Quietness is not merely the absence of sound. It is the posture of being still before God, listening with intention, and creating space for Him to speak into your life. When we choose quietness, we are choosing to withdraw from the constant demand for reaction and the endless noise of human opinions. This silence is not emptiness, but preparation. It allows us to shut out distractions and attune our spirit to divine guidance. In quietness, prayer deepens, meditation becomes fruitful, and our thoughts align more clearly with the will of God. Without quietness, we run the risk of mistaking our own impulses, fears, or desires for God's direction. But when we still ourselves before Him, His voice becomes distinguishable above all others. Quietness also reflects trust. Many people feel the need to act quickly, to speak loudly, or to assert control when uncertainty arises. But quietness before God demonstrates faith that He is in control, even when circumstances seem overwhelming. It is a surrender of our urge to control outcomes and an acknowledgement that His wisdom far exceeds our own. To remain quiet is to say, I will wait for your guidance rather than rush into my own. This kind of faith positions us to receive not only direction but also peace, for God's guidance never leads to confusion or chaos but always to clarity and strength. Furthermore, quietness transforms how we engage with challenges. Instead of responding to difficulties with panic or anger, quietness gives us the patience to discern what God is teaching us in the moment. Sometimes His guidance is not to act, but to wait, not to speak, but to listen, not to push, but to trust. These lessons can only be learned in silence. The world sees waiting as weakness, but in God's economy, waiting in quietness is an act of strength, for it acknowledges that we are relying on Him rather than ourselves. Ultimately, God's guidance and quietness shapes us into people of wisdom and stability. It deepens our relationship with Him, for in listening we learn to recognize His voice more clearly. It aligns our lives with His timing rather than our own, ensuring that we move forward in His strength, not our haste. Quietness is not wasted time. It is the very environment where God does His most important work in us. To embrace quietness is to open your heart fully to His leading and to walk in the assurance that He guides those who wait on Him. Living as a testimony is one of the most powerful ways to influence the world without ever raising your voice. Words can be debated, argued against, or dismissed, but a life that reflects integrity, discipline, and faith cannot be easily denied. People may question what you say, but they cannot ignore what you consistently live. When you focus on yourself and remain silent, your character becomes your loudest statement, your actions become your arguments, and your transformation becomes your message. Living as a testimony means allowing your life to embody the values you hold, so that those who observe you see the evidence of your faith and growth without the need for constant explanation. Living as a testimony requires consistency. Anyone can speak lofty words for a moment, but living them out day after day, in both public and private, proves authenticity. Silence often amplifies this witness because it shows that you do not need to prove yourself with endless words. Instead, the steadiness of your life speaks for you. The quiet strength of patience, humility, and endurance communicates a truth that even the most eloquent arguments cannot match. This kind of living is harder than speaking, but it is also more impactful. Another dimension of living as a testimony is resilience in adversity. People notice how you respond when things go wrong more than when things go smoothly. If your response to challenges is bitterness, anger, or reckless speech, your testimony weakens. But if your response is steady faith, quiet endurance, and trust in God's timing, you speak volumes without uttering a word. Silence in suffering can sometimes communicate more about your faith than long explanations ever could. It demonstrates that your confidence is not in circumstances but in something greater, and that inspires others far beyond what words could accomplish. Living as a testimony also means that your life points beyond yourself. It is not about appearing flawless or pretending perfection, but about demonstrating growth, humility, and reliance on God. People are not drawn to perfection, they are drawn to authenticity. When they see you striving for growth, quietly overcoming struggles, and steadily holding to your convictions, they witness a testimony that is real and relatable. You do not need to announce every victory or defend yourself against every criticism. Your life itself becomes the evidence. Ultimately, living as a testimony is about alignment. It is aligning what you believe with how you live, aligning your private choices with your public image, and aligning your heart with God's will. In this way, your life becomes a silent sermon, preached not with words but with action, attitude, and endurance. To live as a testimony is to understand that the loudest message you can give the world is not your opinions, but your example. And when your example speaks of strength, humility, discipline, and faith, it becomes a light that no noise, no opposition, and no argument can extinguish.